So JJ Redick just had Ben Simmons on his podcast, The Old Man and the Three. And side note here, if you've never checked out The Old Man and the Three before, you've never heard of it, 100% you should go look it up on YouTube. It's really good quality basketball content. But he had Ben Simmons on the podcast today. He had him on there a couple days ago. He uploaded it today. Over an hour-long interview with Ben Simmons, and they talked about all kinds of stuff. They talked about, him getting into basketball as a kid, in college, being on the Sixers, and of course the end of his Sixers tenure, and going forward as a Brooklyn Net. And I've got to say, as someone who is a Sixers fan, and as someone who has spent the last few years absolutely despising Ben Simmons, absolutely hate this man's guts, I have not fully forgiven him after this video. Don't get me wrong, alright? I'm still, trust me, I'm still mad at Ben Simmons. I still believe that the way that he played in that Hawks series is completely inexcusable. I still think that the way that he handled his exit from Philadelphia was not very good and did not shine him in a good light. But I do feel the need to say today, after the last almost 2 years now of constantly slandering Ben Simmons, I and the rest of the Sixers fans, and really the NBA fanbase as a whole, owes him a partial apology because we were a little more harsh than deserved, alright? I don't totally forgive him. A lot of his issues were justifiably criticized, alright? A lot of the stuff that he received, the flack that he got, it was completely justified. Don't get me wrong. But some of it was definitely undeserved, and that especially stems from the fact that the media just makes crap up. The media just straight up fabricates things. The thing about him having his phone in his pocket during the practice he got kicked out of was not true. The thing where he left the group chat during the Nets, this came out a couple weeks ago that it wasn't true. I talked about it at the time because I thought that it was true. That was on me. I just ran with it. I heard the thing that, he left the group chat, and without checking anything, I was just like, yeah, that sounds like something Ben Simmons would do, and I made fun of him for it. All kinds of situations like that happened with him, and he stated how, it gets really freaking tiring when the media sits there and runs with stories that are not fact-checked, that are completely fabricated, and he isn't able to squash them because people want to hear people say bad things about him more than they want to actually hear him defend himself. And honestly, that's justifiable. That's completely justifiable. That is a ridiculous thing for an athlete to have to go through. It's a ridiculous thing for anyone to have to go to. To have your entire life, at least seemingly to everyone else, have your entire life put out there in the open, and people can just say whatever they want, and it's not easy to stop any kind of rumors that spread, especially when everyone is already gunning for you. So I do very much feel some sympathy for Ben Simmons and all of the bullcrap he had to go through. And as a Sixers fan, I would also like to say it sounded to me that while Ben Simmons did have some issues with players on the team, with the organization as a whole, it wasn't just one person, but it really sounds like the majority of his issue, the final straw as it were, was Doc Rivers being a dickhead. And this does not surprise me whatsoever, because we've seen how Doc reacts to criticism, right? Anyone who's watched him after a Sixers game where he makes a stupid decision will see the reporters try to ask him about it, and he completely loses his mind. We've seen him flip his shit over completely reasonable questions like, why are you playing DeAndre Jordan 25 minutes a game when he clearly shouldn't be in the NBA anymore? And he just loses it on people over stuff like that. He's not a pleasant human being. He's a very prideful dude who thinks he knows everything, and it's partially justified. He's an NBA head coach, he won a championship, blah blah blah, but he's not good at his job, and he's not very likable, so it makes sense why him and Ben Simmons would not get along. Ben specifically told him at the infamous practice that he was not ready to play, and Doc Rivers said, well, I'm going to put you in anyway. And then he called him out in front of everyone, and Ben justifiably got upset for that. We can debate, it's here or there whether Ben Simmons himself was justified in saying that he wasn't ready to play just because of mental health issues, but the fact that he explicitly told his coach, I'm not ready, and the coach said, screw you, I'm putting you in there anyway, that's reasonable. It's reasonable for Ben Simmons to be PO'd about that. So I understand that. Now, he said some things in the interview, specifically about the Hawks series, where you can tell that he is not willing to take full responsibility for how utterly atrocious he was. He didn't sit there and talk on the fact that he really hasn't improved on offense over the last 3 years. The free throw thing, he talked about the three-pointers, but he doesn't have any kind of justification for choking that bad at the free throw line. Mental health aside, right? Like, the dude, mental health does not fully excuse the issues that Ben Simmons has, and this is why I only partially forgive him, because he still didn't own up to everything. He was making excuses for himself, even while he was partially taking the blame. Like, for the Trae Young shot, he explained how he knows that it looks really, really bad, and I think his justification for why, in the moment, it wasn't as bad as it looks to everyone else slowed down, I think it's fair. He spinned around a guy, he saw a jersey coming, he threw it to Matisse Thybulle, he made a split-second decision, it happened to be a bad decision. Now, he happened to make a ton of other terrible decisions throughout that series, and that's why he still played like ass as a whole. I could excuse the one thing if it was the only one, but let's not pretend Ben Simmons wasn't crapping the bed for 7 straight games, especially in all 7 fourth quarters. But nevertheless, he has received more flack than deserved, especially from the media, where crap just comes out and it's just straight up untrue. And you've got these people who should understand, because he mentioned like Shaq and Barkley, where they're former NBA players, and Shaq especially, he calls him his LSU brother, and then he sits there and he criticizes Ben without ever actually talking to him about what happened. He sits there and he blasts him, on the news without ever talking to him, and then, publicly he also like, well, he's my LSU brother and I love him and blah blah blah. You know how Shaq is. He does this with everybody. So I do understand why he got as upset as he did. I still absolutely do not trust him as a Brooklyn Net. I don't think he's going to be the perfect fit that Nets fans imagine. I don't think he's ever going to progress much further on offense, and I think he's always going to have some serious issues mentally. However, I and the rest of us, especially my fellow Sixers fans, should at least try to go into this next season, with a more open mind, with somewhat forgiveness and understanding for Ben Simmons, and try to be a little bit more reasonable in our criticisms of him. There is still a lot of reasons for Sixers fans to be mad at him. There are still a lot of things that you can criticize him for. But I'm going to really try, and I think that everyone else should also try, to be a bit more understanding towards him, because there are a lot of stupid things that he has to deal with as an athlete, as someone whose entire life, at least to our perspective, his entire life, is out in the media and people are just saying crap about him. Try to be a little bit more understanding, and try to be a little bit less straight up unfair with the criticisms. You can criticize Ben Simmons, God knows that I'm going to continue to criticize him. But keep it reasonable, keep it fair. That is all I am saying. Ben Simmons has changed my opinion about him for the better after this podcast, and once again, if you've never watched The Old Man and the Three, 100% go and check it out, because JJ Redick is a phenomenal podcast host. Thank you all for watching. I am so excited for this season to start.